What's up, everybody? Welcome to the debut episode of State of the Nation, the Athletics Raiders podcast. I'm Jimmy Durkin, joined here in Alameda by Vic Tafur. What's going on, Vic?
Not much, man. Pretty fired up.
Yeah, that was we just got out of Reggie McKenzie's pre-draft media availability, and there was a lot of entertaining, a lot of nuggets coming out that, right?
Yeah, those things are weird, man. Those things are league mandated, I think, because give us some access. But obviously, Reggie's not going to give us anything, no matter what kind of questions we ask. So, we'll always hit the over/under on nuggets that we get, like newsy nuggets or things that are interesting. I said it at 1/2. So one nugget wins you the big money.
You need.
And everyone lost. We got a big zero. But
there were some arguments. There was some defense that maybe there was.
Reporters trying to say that this was a nugget but no, there was nothing. But nice lunch. We had a nice little grilled chicken and some lasagna, I think it was.
Pesto
pasta.
I like the salad with the avocado.
Broccolini.
I
love the broccolini. So it was good.
Had the panini bar in the back. You missed that.
I missed the panini bar. Yeah, that was.
I like your blondie.
Wasn't very good. Blondie was not good. But anyway, we're here. We're fired up. It should be a fun season.
Yeah, I mean, and we're just kind of for new listeners. Obviously, it's a new podcast. We had the 3rd and 20 show last year that we ran combined our Raiders coverage with our Niners coverage. A little talk about the NFL, and I think it was fun to do. But I think overall, generally mixing the Raiders and Niners coverage usually doesn't work out that well, and so I think the good thing here is all Raiders, and I think that should be fun.
Yeah, we did one last year at Ricky's, and I remember it was weird how we kind of broke off to the 49ers segment. People were like, what are they doing? What are they talking about? The Niners? But, I think we can definitely zero in on the Raiders, and obviously Gruden, fans are pretty fired up about him. So, a lot of stuff to talk about. So I think we just focus on the Raiders and Niners guys and go somewhere else. Yeah, I mean,
there's not a whole lot of Raiders talk locally if you're around here. That's been a topic of conversation. We've had some stories from our media column just about how 95.7 doesn't really pay attention much to these Raiders, and that brought up an interesting conversation. In some of the comments. Where people were asking us, well, okay, if for 95.7 it's a decision that talking Raiders isn't really good for business. Well, what is that like for us at the Athletic? And it's really completely different because I think if you're a local terrestrial radio station, you need obviously the local listeners to be locked in. I think the beauty of a podcast or for us a website, the Athletic, we have that advantage where we don't really have to be locked into that local listenership or readership because what we all know about the Raiders is maybe it's not as big of a fan base as the 49ers locally, but if you expand the globe and you put this out to LA and even across the whole country, go to Mexico, London, I mean you'll see that there's Raider fans everywhere, and that's kind of where we're at an advantage.
Yeah, Raider fans are hungry for any kind of information, any kind of anything at all, any kind of Raiders chat or talk or rumors or opinions. So when the whole 95.7 thing happens and people are like, hey, our numbers are going down when we talk with the Raiders, but to me, maybe you're doing it the wrong way. Maybe you're not, your strategy may be off somewhere else. I can't believe that Raider fans don't want to listen to Raider talk at some point during the day. So I think it's going to be good for us. I think we'll definitely capitalize on that, and I think, I think people are fired up.
What was your first year, covering the Raiders for the Athletic like? What was, going to a game and not having to write a game story, having to have that game story you're filing right as the game ends, and then updating it and writing a notebook and a sidebar and doing grades and all that. How were you able to cover this team differently coming to the Athletic?
It was good. I mean, I'm obviously a newspaper guy for my whole life, so I definitely still read newspapers. But I think part of it's getting outdated. Some of the old things don't really work the way they used to work. So writing a game story, so in my old job, I have to write a kind of a running story through the third and fourth quarter, and you got to file it right when the game ends, so it hits online and people can look at it. I'm not sure who looks at that stuff anyway, who reads a story 5 minutes after the game is over. But that was our goal. So you actually miss some things in the fourth quarter. You have to, you're up and down through your head from the field to your screen. But so now, if I'm not filing right away, I can kind of really watch things more closely. I can take lock in some things, and I think I try and file a story maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours after the game ends, so you're not in a rush in the locker room and take some time, talk to the guys, you can maybe avoid some of the media scrums and go to other guys one-on-one, and you kind of linger a little bit and kind of maybe let it all soak in before you kind of take on what just happened. So I really enjoyed that part of the job. I like everything about the Athletic. I'm very happy I made the move. I think people who've bought in and who subscribed are pretty happy. The feedback's been great. I think it just gives you a different way of looking at it. Like, it's the same kind of job, but just kind of some different wrinkles to kind of make it, I think, more rewarding, both for myself and for the readers, I think.
And one thing that we're going to try to add in, with having this podcast, one thing we want to add to the coverage next year is not just doing a midweek podcast, which I think will be the plan. Kind of have a show midweek that'll kind of maybe, help get you set for that game, but do a post game show each week, which that'll be kind of fun. I think as we get and after you get done in the locker room, we can gather together for 15 minutes, talk a little bit about that game, and kind of give you a little bit of a flavor from that, and try to get that up online pretty quickly, so we can kind of be your post game show.
Yeah, I think that'd be awesome. I think we get some of that fresh emotion, the fresh takes. I think it's gonna be good. I just think it's it's going to be a very exciting season. I mean, regardless of what happens with the wins and losses, just having Gruden here, it's a whole new energy. I think obviously it's a big year for them trying to get back to the winning circle, and just it should be good. I think everything about it sounds like it's going to be a good year.
You've had a lot of time to be around Gruden in the offseason, from the NFL Combine to the owners' meetings, getting to have breakfast with him down there. Just what are your impressions just of kind of seeing this team all of a sudden take on John Gruden's persona?
Yeah, I wasn't here the first time he was here, so I didn't know him at all. So it's been kind of cool just to talk to him on the side a little bit a few times, and I like him. He's obviously he's got the whole energetic exterior, but he's also kind of got a reserved undertone. He's not always like that. He kind of turns it off and on sometimes, and he's a pretty funny guy. I just think he obviously cares. He definitely cares about this organization. He cares about Al Davis. They had some ups and downs, but obviously he credits Al for a lot of the stuff that he's gotten in his life and his coaching career. So I think he wants to do well here for a lot of reasons. I think he also appreciates the Oakland fans. I think part of him wants to win here before they leave in 2 years. So I think people criticize him already because he's brought so many veteran players in, like there's 20 guys. Most of them are over 30. But I get what he's doing. I think if you look at this team the last few years, they have so many young players, like guys they drafted the last 3 years, who you have no idea if those guys are good now, which is that's a bad thing. At this point, you really don't know what you have yet. But you look at the guys like Obi Melifonwu, Mario Edwards Jr., those kind of guys, you have no idea if they're going to be impact players or they're going to be guys who are gone in a couple of years. So I think to kind of hedge against that, you bring in veteran guys who, A, can either push those guys to be better, help them, teach them, give them suggestions, kind of help them get to the next step, or they replace them. Like the guys he brought in are all hungry. I mean, some of these guys may be 30 years old, but they brought a certain type of guy in, guys who are definitely hard-nosed with an edge to them, have been around, kind of like no one's looking for a paycheck. Like people want to win. They want to prove there's something left. So I think that's good. I think it's going to help everyone involved. I mean, I don't know what these guys have left. I mean, no one does. But in most cases, it didn't cost them a lot of money. Most of these guys didn't get big contracts. So I think it's healthy for competition. It's healthy to see where this team is going to be at, and kind of main thing is to push younger guys to be better.
Yeah, I mean, and you don't really know what none of these guys are locked in that they are definitely going to have a role. I mean, Reggie, he didn't say a whole lot today, but one thing he said was, as they look at undrafted free agents, that maybe because they've signed so many guys, they don't have a ton of roster spots, but if they find a guy they like, they'll have to create a roster spot. So there's going to be, an uncertainty for a lot of these guys, and that should be healthy.
Even next week, there's minicamp. I mean, there's going to be veteran guys who are going to be looked at and judged next week. There's probably like 5-10 guys who could get cut. I mean, guys who are by no means safe because they're going to have, all these drafted guys coming in, undrafted guys. So that roster will be over 90 for a couple seconds. You got to cut some guys to make room for the new guys. So you're going to have like a handful of guys playing for their jobs next week at the minicamp, which is kind of a new thing for this organization.
Obviously, Khalil Mack has not been involved in the offseason program. Reggie was asked about it today. Said he hasn't really talked to him. I don't think any of us are going to sit here and act like that's a major issue. This is a deal that'll eventually get worked out. But is it a big deal at all? Is it any kind of a deal that we don't have Khalil Mack participating right now?
I don't think so. I check in with Khalil every now and then. I talk to his agent. I just think it's a process. Obviously, it's going to take a long time. It's a lot of money we're talking about. I think the Raiders definitely want him here. I mean, you look at Khalil Mack in terms of on-the-field production, off the field. There's nothing. There's spotless record. I mean, he's obviously a guy you want to be. He's a foundation of your franchise. So in this case, there's a lot of money we're talking about. Probably talking about $70 million guaranteed money. Yep. So obviously, it takes some time to get organized. And the other X factor is Aaron Donald. I mean, what's happening to him with the Rams. I know Reggie said today that it doesn't matter what happens to Aaron Donald, but of course it does.
Yeah.
One of those guys is going to set the market. The other guy is going to come afterwards. So they're definitely two of the best defensive players in the NFL, and they're both in the exact same boat. So I think Khalil will be here at some point. I don't think he'll be here soon. I think it might take a month, 2 months. Who knows? But I think I'm not worried about him as far as training camp goes. And again, with Khalil Mack, he's in immaculate shape. The guy, I don't know what his percent of body fat is, probably a ridiculous number. So he's not going to be eating chips on the couch, getting out of shape. I'm sure he's working in the gym right now as we talk. The players around him all respect him and love him. So no one's even having a second thought about him not being here, it being a big deal.
And I mean, with the position he plays, how complex is that defense to go learn, right? I mean, it's not like he's got to learn all these, zone coverages. And I mean, go get the quarterback.
Yeah, get the quarterback and stop the run. He's also great at stopping the run. So I just think, Gruden himself said it. I mean, that guy, he's a stud. And Gruden has said his best is yet to come. We haven't seen the best of him yet because you think about it, he's never
had no help.
Yeah, exactly. Help. Not much help on the other side, not much help inside as far as the push goes, not much help behind him. The cornerbacks have not been great. So I think he's a guy who will only get better. I think Reggie knows this. John knows this. So I think he'll get his money. It's just going to take a little bit of time.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the draft. Reggie, of course, not giving us much info there, and we wouldn't expect it. But, you asked him, is there a position group that looks deep? And he said, yeah. Which one? Oh, I don't know.
Next question.
Next question. What's the best case scenario for the Raiders in the draft? They draft at number 10. They're a lot of this. I mean, if there's a quarterback that somebody wants there, it could be a very good position for them to try to trade down. Is that the best case scenario, do you think?
I think it might be. Obviously, you can get an impact defensive guy at 10, which they definitely need. But I think you look at the long term, like the financial stuff part of it. Obviously, you're going to pay Carr, whatever he's making, $125 million. Khalil probably same boat. So then, and you're going to need a left tackle at some point soon. Donald Penn's probably got a year left. I know Donald will probably fight me on this, but he thinks he has 2 years left. But I think he's got a year left with the Raiders. So ideally, you bring in a guy who can play right tackle this year, can move to left tackle when next year and Penn's gone. And so to do that, I'm not sure you can take a guy at 10. 10's too high. This group of tackles is not great. I think there's 3 guys who I like a lot, who I think can probably be that guy who can play right side and left tackle next year. But those guys are probably available later in the first round, even the bottom of the first round. Mm-hmm. So really, in terms of your financial outlook for the future, you're probably best served trading down to one of these teams that wants a quarterback or an impact DB, getting a left tackle, a right tackle. You feel the need now, and you set up financially for the next 5-6 years. You got a left tackle at a very good price. So if I was Reggie McKenzie, that's what I would do. But at the same point, there are some really good defensive players in this draft who can help you right now. So that also would be good also. You can't lose them unless you pick the wrong guy. So.
You said if you're Reggie McKenzie, well, that's another question here. How much is this draft going to be?
I misspoke.
Exactly. How much of this draft is going to be Reggie McKenzie, and how much is it going to be John Gruden? Because, we know you don't pay Gruden $100 million for him to just sit there, yes, Reggie, I like that, go for it, right?
Yeah, Gruden's calling the shots. There's no doubt about it. But I think Reggie, obviously, it's his scouting staff in place. He's done a lot of the work already. It's his roster. He knows the guys he's brought in and what holes he has to fill. So I do think right now, I've heard good things about how they're working together. I think they both like each other personally. They're both laid back at times. They both are big film guys. So I think Reggie's okay with the arrangement. Obviously doesn't have a choice, but I think it's working out fine for him as far as like the give and take. And I don't think he has a problem with he says they like the same kind of guys. So I kind of believe that. So I think Gruden has the last call, but I think they'll be on the same page. I don't think it'll be a case where like Reggie's like, I want that guy, and John's like, no, forget you, we're going this way. I think they're going to be in the same way, the same path. They know their needs, they know what's out there, and they have quite a few needs. So I think they can definitely go different ways. But so I think Gruden's calling the shots, but I think it's not a big deal at this point.
Yeah, this draft would seem pretty important for Reggie McKenzie. You mentioned it's his scouting staff, and I think the way scouting staffs work is their contracts usually run through the draft. So by the time the draft ends, they could be making some changes there. And we know that the last couple of drafts have obviously not been good for Reggie. You look at last year was basically a complete wash. You got nothing out of that. Your first 2 picks didn't even play. He was asked today about, do you know anything about those guys? No, he hasn't seen them play. if this is going to be a long-term relationship between Gruden and McKenzie, how important is this draft?
I think it's important. I think you have to hit some home runs this year, and also I think Reggie looks at the guy you mentioned. We talked about the last few drafts, and maybe it was the coaching staff. Maybe Reggie's like, you know what? I brought these guys in. The staff didn't get the most out of them, so maybe Gruden and his guys do a better job of that. So
Jahad Ward's an All-Pro, right?
Exactly. Jahad Ward's going to be All-Pro next year, but so that's part of it. Obviously, hopefully they get more out of those players than the last staff did. And if not, then you're like, you know what, Reggie? These guys suck. I mean, we thought maybe it was Del Rio's guys and his staff, but my guys came in. These guys suck. That's on you. So that could definitely happen.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think that's, for me, the most interesting part of this off-season workouts and training camp is going to be those 10 or so guys who the last 3 years of draft picks, are they worth anything? I mean, and no one knows. I mean, I guarantee people kind of, even the old staff, the new staff, he's got some talent. You can see that. So I think he's fine. The injuries are a concern, but you know what he has and what he's going to be. I think he's going to be pretty good. But otherwise, I think it's wide open. You have no idea if the guys can play in the NFL or not.
I want to go over some of the off-season moves, starting kind of with some of the guys that are no longer on this roster. And, we got to start with Michael Crabtree because obviously, as you reported on your way to the Combine, he had been told that he was going to be brought back. And that was, of course, the plan. And then plans change, right? I mean, and suddenly he's cut and they're signing Jordy Nelson. Is that all that came down to with Jordy Nelson came available and they liked him better? And are you surprised by that move? Do you believe Nelson is an upgrade for the Raiders over Crabtree?
I think it's close. I get why he did it. I think with Crab, obviously had a rough end of last year, both on and off the field. Had some problems with the coaching staff. And I think this new staff was a little leery of him. They're like, it was actually, I think I reported it was a month where he and Derek weren't talking last year. And the new staff was like, what's that about? And both guys didn't really give a lot. I mean, it wasn't really a big reveal of why they were mad at each other. So definitely there are question marks about those two guys and about Crabtree going forward. But he had a great contract for his production over the last few years. I think he made $7.5 million. That's hard to find someone that does that what he did for that price. So they were going to bring him back. That was the plan. And so then Jordy Nelson became available. Jordy Nelson, a guy who Reggie McKenzie was on the staff in Green Bay when they drafted him. He knows him like top and bottom. John Gruden loves the guy. And then the cherry on the ice cream sundae was that Jordy is a good locker room guy. Yeah. He's a guy who helps younger players. I'm not saying Crabtree doesn't, but it's a different way. It's different attitude, I guess. Not as laid back, not as nonchalant, in terms of the hands-on approach in the locker room. So, and they wanted that. They wanted a fresh approach. They wanted to make some changes to the locker room last year. So it became pretty much, hey, Jordy, you want Crab's contract? We'll give you the same contract. And Jordy was like, yeah, I want it. And that was a done deal. And I think it worked out great for Crab in that he got more money in Baltimore. So really, everyone's happy. I mean, and that's kind of cool, I guess, the way it worked out.
We might finally have somebody that catches the ball that we can talk to. I mean, you looked at the last couple of years. I mean, that was, not that a guy's dealing with the media has anything to do with how they are as a locker room guy, but if you wanted to go talk to a receiver, especially last year, at least a couple of years ago, Andre Holmes is a good guy. I mean, not the most significant guy to go talk to, but you look at last year. Mark Cooper, we know he doesn't say much. Crabtree, he doesn't talk. Right. Seth Roberts doesn't say much. That receiver group and guys that caught the ball. I mean, just offensive skill players. I mean, because obviously Marshawn Lynch is not a guy that talks. Like I said, I don't judge a guy on how they are in the locker room based on if they talk to the media or not. But you did not have a lot of kind of outgoing personalities that could take that leadership role.
Yeah, his first couple of years, Crabtree was better. He definitely talked more after games. He wouldn't talk during the week, which is fine. He kind of make deals with certain guys, like with Charles Woodson was the same way. Like, look, I'm not going to bug you during the week, but I'm going to need you after the game. And Woodson was always there. Crabtree was there a good deal of the time his first couple of years. But I think when you bring a guy like Marshawn Lynch in, and Lynch doesn't talk, if you're Crabtree's like, that guy ain't talking, why am I going to talk? Yeah. And then that's like, and what are they going to say? Well, because he's better than you are. He's more special than you. I mean, so yeah, Crabtree didn't talk much at all last year after games, and that was a bad thing. It's always good to get those guys' insight. But and Jordy, I'm sure, will always be available. So I guess that's a win for reporters, I guess, for the beat guys.
Yeah. Going through some more of the offseason moves, the one that I think a lot of them were fairly predictable. I mean, Clive Walford getting cut, David Amerson, Sean Smith, obviously those were pretty obvious. The one that probably was the biggest surprise kind of came out of nowhere was Marquette King. When you start looking at the contract and paying, almost $3 million to a punter, kind of makes sense. And that's what, Reggie basically confirmed that today, that he had a steep contract. Well, side note, Reggie, you gave him that contract. But, I mean, I know we were kind of all surprised at initially, but as you maybe had kind of had time to think about it and kind of talk to people about that move, was it less surprising to you?
It was weird. I mean, I had heard about, there was whispers about all kinds of random things.
Yeah.
I'd heard whispers he might be in trouble. I was like, no, he's too good a punter. They gave him the contract. He's like a top 3 guy in the league. I mean, I would think punting is important. If you're a new coach, you want to get your defense helping him on track. So I kind of dismissed all those things. It was my mistake. I think the bottom line is, he made a lot of money, but again, that's not, I don't think why he got cut. I think if you're a new coach, you come in and you have a great punter and he's worth whatever he's worth. But you hear things like, this guy's kind of a diva. This guy's kind of got his own thing going. Players in the locker room don't really like him that much. Players kind of have a hard time with him, which you can see by Bruce Irvin's tweets. Bruce Irvin wants to freaking cover punts against the Broncos. He wants to kill the guy. So, and then you're like, you know what? Am I going to pay a guy $2.9 million if I'm not crazy about him or the teammates are kind of, there's question marks about him? And then I can probably get a guy much cheaper who's not as good. Obviously, there's no way you're going to replace him value-wise in terms of his punting ability. But again, it's the locker room. You're making changes to the locker room you hope kind of click. And a guy who comes in, I'm sure the punter they bring in will be like the usual punter, like a mute, and won't say anything. It's like walk in his corner and punt and go home.
Like Marquette used to be.
Exactly, like early Marquette, which I'm sure Gruden would love. So I think it makes sense. I mean, you're coming in, you want to change the culture a little bit, and if you can change the culture and save $2.9 million, that's kind of a no-brainer.
All right, well, let's go over some of the signings they made this offseason. What was the best signing, do you think? We talked a little bit about Jordan Nelson already, but who do you think is the guy that they brought in that's going to have maybe the most impact in terms of the free agents? It's
a good question. I like Whitehead. I think Whitehead, I'm not sure he's a classic impact guy because you watch the highlights, but he does one thing well. He tackles well. He's not great in coverage, but he definitely is a hard-nosed guy. He kind of runs around, and he's always around the ball, which is a stupid coach speak. But the good thing about him is he can play anywhere. He can play any in the linebacker spots, which is good because right now they don't have inside linebacker. If Navarro Bowman hasn't re-signed yet, so you're not sure what's going on there. We mentioned the younger players, like they don't know what they have in Markel Lee or like even Corey James showed flashes, but I don't know. John Gruden likes Corey James. Yeah. No one does. So I think Whitehead gives you a guy, look, you know what? Ideally, he's an outside linebacker, but if we have to put him inside, he'll be fine. He won't be great, but he'll make the tackles we need to make at the right time. He's reliable. So, and he sounds like I talked to him the other day, did a story on him, and good guy. Seems like definitely the other guy would be a good leadership type guy in the locker room. It's definitely good vibes. So I like that signing. I think in terms of not a lot of flash, but I think you need some little sizzle and a little reliable, guy who can come in and kind of get things done.
What do you think will happen eventually with Navarro Bowman? Do you think they, will end up, is that something that you'd see how the draft goes? If you get a guy that you really like in the draft, then you kind of move on. If you don't, maybe you go back to him. I mean, I know, as you've reported all along, they have an offer out to him and he wants more money.
That's pretty much it. I think I love how the fan perception of Bowman is different than mine. I think the team's also is different. I thought he was okay last year. He came in. I thought he was fine. I didn't think he was good. I didn't think he was bad. I think he came in and kind of like, he's not the player he once was. And he'll even admit to that. But I just think that I'm not sure the price they have in mind is going to go up. I'm not sure based on need. They're going to we'll pay you more money. They might get someone else. So I just think I haven't talked to Navarro. He's not answering my calls. But I think that the sense I get is he's going to wait till training camp if he has to. And if someone gets hurt, there's opening, then your price goes up, which just makes sense for a veteran guy. And you can always come in probably to what he's getting offered now somewhere. So I don't think it'll get done anytime soon. I think they probably will draft a linebacker in this draft at some point, maybe late. I think Markel Lee is at least got some potential, some upside. Obviously, he's a little stiff. He's not great in the pass game, but I think they like him and they can use him in the run game. So I think worst comes to worst, they might be okay with Markel Lee and somebody else than giving Bowman more money than they want to give him. I think they also think he was fine last year. Not good, but just fine. So I think there's no rush to overpay a guy who you're not totally in love with.
Well, I think a lot of the fan perception there is he was an actual NFL quality middle linebacker for a team that, like, how long has it been since they had an NFL quality middle linebacker? And so it's, when they've been running out some of the guys that they've been running out, the Ben Heaney's of the world. And
what's up, Ben Heaney? Yeah, it's just that's crazy. We talked about it in the last few years how, like, Reggie was a linebacker. Del Rio was a linebacker. And they can't find a freaking linebacker. Ken Norton was a linebacker. They can't find one. And I think part of it is, like, they must have, like, this sense of, like, well, we know this position so well, we can take anybody and make him into, like, a playmaking linebacker. And they can't. So I just think Corey James shows me some things every now and then. So I'm not going to rule out Corey James. But so obviously it's still a need. There are some good ones at 10. I mean, there's definitely Raekwon Smith will definitely fit the bill. But again, they've showed no signs in the past of drafting linebackers in the first round after Orlando. So who knows? But yeah, I think Navarro, if he comes back at some point, it will be at their price, not his, I think.
I want to get into the schedule before we do. The Raiders put out the little videos of Marshawn Lynch and Josh Johnson kind of breaking the schedule down, and it's a fun offseason story, right? But the question really becomes, I mean, is Josh Johnson going to be a guy that is going to play in any part of that schedule?
Maybe he's the Marshawn liaison. Maybe he's the guy.
I kind of think that's what I'm thinking.
You have no shot at getting Marshawn in that video, not for Josh Johnson.
Nope.
Hey, Marshawn, we're going to do a schedule reveal video on the team website. Do you want to do it? I mean, the answer would be unprintable. But hey, man, Josh Johnson, your cousins are going to be in it. Do you want to do it? And then I'm sure he's like, all right, whatever. So maybe that's Josh Johnson's role, and maybe he's.
It's not a bad role.
It's not a bad role.
I mean, if you're going to make. I think what was one of the big things? Gruden, if he was going to have Marshawn back, he wanted to have a committed Marshawn.
Right.
Well, how do you get a committed Marshawn? You give a job to his cousin. Give a job to Josh, and you give him Josh around to kind of get him going all offseason. I mean, it's not a bad strategy.
Do you tell Josh that? Like, hey, Josh, we kind of like a quarterbacking skills. I know John has you before, and you bounce around a little bit. You got some, but mainly you're going to be our Marshawn guy. You're going to keep Marshawn in line, and if he's going to run on the field to get somebody, you stop him on the sidelines. Don't let him do that. Like, don't let him play practice with high school kids. In the middle of the week. I mean. I guess. I
mean, I don't know. That's Josh's high school too. He might join him. But I mean, if you're Josh, I mean, when's the last time he played in an NFL game? I think it's been. I'm looking it up right now. 2012 or 2013, he got into 2 games with the Bengals. I mean, so he's a guy that he's. Yeah, I don't think he has delusions of the fact that he's going to be out there making an NFL team. I mean, it was kind of funny last year when he was
that video he's talking about. They're going to go. He's talking about he's going to be around for all those games.
You got to talk like that. I mean, I talked to him last year when he was here at Marshawn's camp, and he's talking about Giants. He was on the Giants during the off season last year, and he's talking about how when he as a member of the Giants is going to be coming in to face Marshawn. I mean, obviously you got to talk like that, but I mean, I honestly. Josh is the career he's been able to carve out as a guy that didn't have a scholarship coming out of high school. Went and played for Jim Harbaugh down in San Diego, non-scholarship school for football, and to be able to carve out the amount of jobs that he's been able to continue to get, it's impressive. I mean, he's he's a good guy. I mean, I like Josh. I mean, he's.
I'll say that the bar to beat out Connor Cook is not that high. I mean, Connor Cook. He's one of those guys you hear good things about. You have these ideas about what he is, and so far at least you watch him in practice, and he's not that guy. He's not quite the. So I know Gruden liked him out of college, and he said good things in his Gruden camp. I have no idea.
That doesn't mean much.
Yeah, it doesn't mean much. So I have no idea what Gruden thinks now, but I mean, at this point, I think it's pretty clear E.J. Manuel's your number 2 guy, and I guess Connor and Josh are fighting for the number 3 spot. In which case, if you factor in that, Josh can keep Marshawn kind of going in the right direction, keep him focused, locked in, and then maybe that's worth it. So, yeah, it's interesting. It will definitely be a good story to follow as we go along.
All right, well, let's talk about the schedule. As Marshawn referred to it, it's very doable, right?
Very doable.
they obviously have the London game, but that's kind of they kind of make up for that by getting a road game down in Santa Clara. So they really only have 8 games they have to travel for, and as always, one of those 8 games is down to L.A. They go to Arizona,
which they own. So
yeah,
L.A.'s our home game basically for the Raiders. The fans there are crazy.
Go to Arizona. That's an easy trip. They'll have some fans there. Maybe some Vegas fans will make the trip out to Phoenix.
See if there's more Vegas influence. Yeah, there's 10 games on the West, which is pretty huge, and then they have 4 primetime games, and 3 are at home, 1's in Santa Clara. So it's pretty much 4 home games in prime time. So yeah, I couldn't imagine a nicer schedule. I know some people look at some of the things and have concerns about like starting off against the Rams. Rams are a great team. That's fine, but your next 3 games are against pretty bad teams. I guess was it the Broncos, Dolphins, and Browns?
Yep. Then the Chargers.
Yeah, so you have a good shot of being 3-1 there, even if you're not quite running on all 4 cylinders. So I know at the end of the season you got the Chiefs, a short week at KC to close out the year. It's going to be cold. Yeah, it's fine, but you have to have some challenges. I just think that compared to the last 2 years, when you're like, whoa, this is a tough schedule. This is not easy. I think this is much more enticing if you're the Raiders. Like, you know what? This is like we said, this is doable. We can definitely get to where we want to go based on the schedule.
And beyond, the having 10 out of 16 regular season games on the West Coast, you can actually even extend that and say they have 14 out of their 20 games on the West Coast because they're 2 preseason games. They go down to L.A. to face the Rams, and they go up to Seattle to face the Seahawks. So they don't leave the West Coast for the preseason, which when you consider these years where they've going to Dallas or Minnesota or Green Bay for the preseason, they really have been able to cut out that preseason travel too. That's pretty nice.
It is nice. Don't forget that they're going to South Beach also. So I booked my room last night. I'm staying on South Beach. So to me, right there, the schedule is a success. If that's on there, that's a good schedule.
Yeah, and it's in September. You got
it's
little bit humid.
I was gonna say, Raider fans and Raider players probably weren't happy about the timing of it. September, it's a little hot. They've had some bad games there in September in the past, so they've wilted it a little bit in the heat. So that's not ideal for them, but for me, it's fine. I don't mind the heat.
You'll deal with it.
I'll deal with it. Yeah.
All right. Well, we promised that we would answer a few questions here, so let's pull a couple of them up. I'll start with one from Carlos Claudio. Any cred to the perception that Reggie and Gruden can't work together or don't want to see eye to eye on personnel needs and wants? We kind of talked about this earlier, but what do you think there?
Yeah, I think we kind of hit on that one. I think that they like each other. Personally, I think you can definitely sense that when you talk to them individually and together. I think they both are definitely football film guys. I think they definitely have a similar kind of laid-back mentality. And obviously, John can kind of ramp it up and get fired up, but Reggie's not going to get ramped up. But I think they're on the same page for now. I think they both realize what it is. And I think no one's saying, hey, we're going to be together for the next 5 years, or all 10 of Gruden's years. But I think it'll be fine this year. And they'll probably reevaluate at the end of the season, and we'll see what it is. But I think for the next year, I don't see any problems with those guys getting along and working together.
You really think Gruden's coaching all 10 years?
No, I think 5. I think 5's a good goal. To me, we're going off track here, but to me, it's a great deal for the Raiders and for him. And not even forget football. It's just a business decision. Like, all right, John, we're going to give you whatever it is, $100 million. You're going to get us through our last 2 years in Oakland, which could be, it might have been hostile. It might have been a little dicey. So you can get us through our last 2 years in Oakland. You're going to give us our first 2 years, at least, in Vegas, a nice introduction. And we'll have you at the Hooters Casino with your Hooters sponsorship, and you'll be smiling and be great and Chucky. And so I get you into Vegas for 2 years, maybe 3 years. And then if you want to go back and walk away, that's cool. So you just give us 5 years, and hopefully, ideally, we're winning. But if not, you got us through it could have been a rough patch for us. So I think football aside, and it might be a good football-wise also, but football aside, just business-wise, it's a great move for both parties.
All right, another question from Mr. McMurderer.
Mr. McMurderer.
All right, assuming the quarterback feast occurs and 4 of them are taken in the top 10, who do you see the Raiders taking with what is basically a top 6 pick?
Well, if 4 quarterbacks go in the top 10, top 9, I guess, right? I'm saying, which I think I'm not a big Baker Mayfield guy. That's another topic for another day. But so if 4 guys go, then all of a sudden what I thought was impossible might very well happen, where Minkah Fitzpatrick falls to them at 10. And I think Minkah Fitzpatrick is probably a top 4 guy in this draft. I think he can play safety. He can play slot corner well. He can blitz. There's history with him and Durkin, the new secondary coach, was at Alabama last year. So to me, that's a slam dunk pick if you don't want to trade down. I also don't mind Vita Vea up front. Roquan Smith is a good player, linebacker. So I think you can't lose. they're in a great spot where I think they're going to get a very good player at 10 if you pick there. So I think I'll go Fitzpatrick as my first choice if I were them at that point, if he falls. If not, I'm not sure what they think about Vita Vea. I think there's some, question marks about him if he can be an impact pass rushing guy. Obviously, the run defense is stellar. That's a given. He's going to be a beast against the run. Can he be a guy that pushes the pocket more than he did in college? I think he can be. I have no idea what Reggie and John think, but I think he'd be a very intriguing guy at 10 for them.
All right. The rest of the questions are pretty repetitive about Reggie, so I think we're going to wrap it up right there.
All right,
But cool. Well, hey, we appreciate everybody listening to our first episode of State of the Nation. We'll get this going up on Apple Podcasts and all the other Google Play, all that stuff. You got to get a first episode out, and then you can submit it. So it'll take a week or so before it's on all the platforms. But Vic and I plan to be back next Friday and talk a little bit about the first round draft pick and maybe leading into what day 2 of the draft is looking like. But hey, appreciate you listening and appreciate you checking out all of our content on The Athletic.
Yeah, we got some big plans. We're going to have some players on once in a while in special cases. I think we'll do some remote locations, maybe back at Ricky's once in a while. And obviously, any input you guys have is great. On Twitter, get back to us. We'll definitely want to make this the show you guys want to listen to. So I think I'm pretty fired up. I liked our beat. The beat we chose is pretty sweet. Put that in the car every once in a while. So I'm pretty excited about this, and definitely we'll talk to you next week.
The Marriott Bar in training camp. There's going to be episodes in the Marriott Bar in training camp. So
that could be sloppy. All right, cool.
All right. Thanks a lot, guys.